Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for listening to Gettin' Savvy in Health, Wealth, and Beauty. Important to note that everything is for entertainment purposes only. Please do speak and meet with a financial advisor before making any investment decisions. And also, please meet and speak with your GP before making any health or beauty decisions.
First of all, I'm highly irritable this week, and I think everybody here is because of the cold and the snow. And I think they say something like Toronto is going to be like the coldest place in North
That's right.
America or something tomorrow, like -50 it's going to feel like. Anyhow,
Why is
I've
that
decided,
irritating?
I've been telling this to people. So like in medicine, there's a condition called SAD or SAD. I'm sure you've heard of it. It's
Yeah.
seasonal affective disorder, and it affects a lot of people. So they have, you know, depression and depressive like symptoms when in winter times, when there's less sunlight, shorter days, cold weather. So I don't have that. I feel for people that do, but I definitely have SID, which is seasonal irritability disorder. So
Did
it's a
you
new,
just make that up?
I did. So it's a new diagnosis. I'm thinking of calling the DSM creators, the diagnostics, whatever it stands for, Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or I forget what the DSM stands for. It's been so
Okay.
long. But it's basically a book that tells you all the different mental health disorders. And I think SID should be in there.
I think you're right. Surely,
Yes.
surely there's something that you can take for that.
Um, well, you mean like medication, or you mean like,
Yeah. That.
there is. I mean, there definitely, yeah. The best thing is supposed to be when you're feeling irritable. I mean, obviously, I'm saying this like as a joke, but if it was
Right.
actually like interfering with my ability to function, yes. I mean, then you would look at different medications that help with the irritability, like antidepressants or anti-anxiety
Yeah.
medications. But actually, yoga, and specifically, I read that the downward dog position is supposed to
Yeah.
really help with irritability and withdrawal. So people that are going through like drug withdrawals and
Hmm.
feeling very like amped up, uh,
Hmm.
doing downward dog is supposed to be very calming. So
Hmm.
if you see me doing lots of downward dogs,
That's why.
anyhow. But you know what did
Anyhow,
cheer me up? You know what did cheer me up today?
what?
I will tell you.
What?
I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Catherine.
You got our song.
Listen to the lyrics.
Think your own stars and have a rich future.
Healthy body.
Looking amazing.
I think that counts for something. We talk about everything,
Okay.
and we
Maybe you
talk
don't sing.
about real life. So whether you're looking for a friend or looking for tips, you've come to the right place. You will get.
Hey, let the AI girl sing. This is all AI generated, correct?
Yes. All
Okay.
right.
Well,
I
that
will play more later. But
yeah,
if you're looking to cheer up, go create a song. And
that's a good idea.
music really helps. Anyhow,
Does
so
it
let's
does.
talk about real stuff.
Okay.
So
Well, real stuff. But
yeah.
so funny, that you used AI to generate that song.
hmm
And you also wanted to talk about sexual stuff today.
Yeah.
And therefore, I was going to look at some sexy stocks or what does sexy stocks mean?
Yep.
So AI is certainly one of the sexy areas to investing right now. But anyway, let's start more with your side
I
first
can
today.
start with some medical stuff. So yeah, so I did want to talk about it. So I came across this article that just sort of caught my attention, and it said that less sex is linked to earlier menopause. So basically, the study was done. These researchers at the University College London found that women who engage in sex once a week or even once per month have a lower risk of entering menopause early
Hmm.
compared to those who have less frequent activity. So basically, they looked at women. It was a U.S. study involving 3,000 women who were on average 45 at the time of the start of the study, and they followed them over the course of a decade. And they interviewed them about their sexual activity and their health and their lifestyle. And they defined sex or sexual activity as obviously intercourse or oral sex or masturbation counted as
Hmm.
well. And what they found was that by the end of the study, so 10 years later, 45% of the women had entered menopause by the average age of 52. And the women who engaged in sexual activity once a week had a 28% lower likelihood of entering menopause early
Hmm.
compared to those who had it less often. So it was a really interesting study. And what the theory is that if a woman is not having sexual activity and there's no chance of pregnancy, the body chooses not to invest energy into ovulation. And that's the reason that menopause may happen earlier. 'Cause
Interesting.
yeah, it's really interesting. And then it also talks about this whole so then I thought, well, maybe it's a chicken and egg scenario. Like maybe it's because the women who had lower estrogen because they were already going into menopause early were less
Okay.
interested in sexual activity and therefore, that's why they were already going into menopause early. But apparently, they found that it had nothing to do, they adjusted for factors like estrogen levels, body mass index, smoking, or the age of the first period. So they took away all those other um, competing variables and they found that it was just the frequency of sexual activity. So the takeaway is if you want to
Hmm.
delay menopause and if you want to keep your hormones pumping,
Wow.
you got to keep pumping.
Well, and I have to say though, for the women who, don't want to be out there per se, if you know what I mean, I
Mhm.
think it's great that masturbation,
Yeah.
counts.
So they looked at also how this was affected. The hypothesis was also that maybe would it be affected if a woman lives with a man in the household versus separately, but apparently that didn't influence the results of the findings. It was just, I guess, the body. And then you think, like, how does the body know you're having activity? So I guess maybe it was based on blood flow to the area, or maybe it was based on orgasm. They didn't define that. So
They need to add in the living situation because talk about irritability. Hello. It's
yes,
like, come on.
yeah.
Who left the socks on the floor? That kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's the stress and the stuff that's going on in the household with your
Yeah.
partner, with your kids, with people. Just yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyhow, I thought that was a really interesting study that I was looking at, and then also it's been coming up a lot. So especially when you're in perimenopause and you're in menopause, it's a question I get at least once a week.
Hmm.
I'm noticing that, people will say like my libido isn't what it used to be, or I can't achieve orgasm the way I used to, or I'm just not interested. And what can we do about it? So it's one of these things that I thought would be really helpful to sort of go through what causes it
Hmm.
and what are some of the different ways that we can tackle it. So when I say that to people, the first thing they think is, what do you think of when I say like libido and how to increase it?
What
Most
do
people
I think of?
yeah, like, what would you think of, like, that you've heard of that might increase libido?
Gosh, I haven't really heard much, Melissa. Like I haven't really, but what, I mean,
Well, like, a lot of people think about testosterone, right?
oh,
So
right. So taking
yeah,
hormones.
taking hormones and stuff. So, I sort of wanted to go through, like, why libido does decrease with age, specifically for women. And
Okay.
obviously, the first and most obvious thing is decreasing hormones. So as we age and as our ovaries age, the level, even if you're still getting a regular menstrual cycle, the levels of hormones are going to go down. So the amount of estrogen you have in your system is going to be reduced. The amount of progesterone you have in your system is going to be reduced and
Hmm.
fluctuate. And
Yeah.
the amount of testosterone that you have in your system, because testosterone makes a difference for women as well, is going to be reduced.
Right.
So, you might be thinking, well, I still get a regular period. Does that mean my hormones are normal? Well, no, it means
Mm.
they're starting to change. And
Hmm.
especially now with women being so lean and focusing on having
Hmm.
healthy bodies, exercising, keeping body fat low,
Hmm.
that's sort of a double whammy because when our ovaries start producing less estrogen, we rely a lot on our fat stores because there's an enzyme, an aromatase enzyme that causes fat to produce estrogen. So all of a sudden now your natural hormones are reduced,
Hmm.
then your body fat stores are reduced, and your energy might be reduced because maybe you're trying to be in a caloric deficit. And that, paves the way for this reduced interest in sexual
Hmm.
activity.
Interesting.
So that was number one. Number two is brain chemistry changes. So we always think hormone, 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 estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, but we forget about other neurotransmitters like
Hmm.
dopamine levels and serotonin levels. So dopamine tends to be associated with arousal and increased interest in sexual activity. That's why some drugs that increase dopamine make people feel more aroused.
Hmm.
So as we age, our dopamine levels naturally tend to decline.
Hmm.
And serotonin is the opposite. So when we have serotonin dominance, that can reduce our desire. And that's why people on SSRI medications,
Right.
antidepressant medications, often notice that they have decreased interest in sexual activity.
Right.
And then, like you said, the socks on the floor, our cortisol levels go up, our stress hormone goes up. So all of a sudden, we've got lower sex hormones, we've got less dopamine, we may
Mm-hmm.
be on SSRIs that affect our serotonin, and we're stressed out because our kids are driving us crazy and our partners are driving us crazy and work's driving us crazy. And it just leads to this perfect storm of, sorry, not interested. I have a headache,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
then, yeah, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, I think that, one of the things about cortisol that for me anyway, gives me an interest in it is it does, I think it's a reason why people store fat.
It can be.
It can be. And so there are, from what I understand, there's certain, I'm more on I take lots of vitamins, that. I like all those kind of natural
Mhm.
ways to try to change things. And so, I'm always kind of looking for the natural way to make sure my cortisol isn't high or doesn't
Yeah.
spike. I don't know what those necessarily are. I know
Well, things like what we
possible.
talked about, like yoga, things like deep breathing, things like,
Yeah.
you know, that's why I'm always surprised. Sometimes when I do fitness classes, I always look at the people, it tends to be the last 10 minutes of an exercise class is often the part where you focus on breathing, when you focus on relaxation. And I always look at the women that get up and leave during that part. They're like, ah,
Hmm.
I finished my workout. I don't need to stay for this. And to me, that's the reward of the workout. And I feel like you've done your physical exercise and now this is what's so important. It's
Yeah.
also a very important part of the workout.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
so
Oh,
stay at the end for
yeah.
Shavasana.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I have to say too, like I started to stretch in the morning and it's like it is so rewarding. It
Have you
feels
ever been
so
to one
good.
of those Be Stretched clinics?
Oh yes.
I've never
Oh
been.
yes. It's fabulous.
I wanna go. So
Fabulous.
what do they do? They just
Well, you just lie there
okay.
and they use different bands to stretch you in different ways. A lot of the legs, arms, everything. And you don't do anything, but you really feel the stretch. And they say that that actually burns calories. Like you're really feeling it. Um, but no, I was starting to go to one in Aspen actually. And, it's hard to get the appointment. It's
Really?
difficult, yeah, and it was difficult to employ people there because it's so expensive to live, right?
Hmm.
But there are these, some of them are franchised, right? Like where a
Yeah.
lot of them are, and they are popping up in more and more places. But if you can get to one and use it regularly, you feel phenomenal after.
After, right?
Yep,
Yeah, I wanna go
like
because
endorphins.
we we live in this constantly contracted state, our muscles are constantly contracting. It's very rare we stretch it, and I've been trying to do that more at the gym also, like, with, like, more hanging. So
Yeah,
whenever I'm at the gym, I try to go on a bar and just hang and just stretch my
yeah,
body out.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's important.
Yeah. So you're gonna say there's a third thing. Is there a
Oh, the
third
third
thing?
thing is also just your physical changes as you age can affect enjoyment. So, one of the hallmark symptoms of menopause is joint pains. And people forget that, right? They forget that, oh, my knee hurts, my back hurts, my shoulder hurts. That can be a symptom of perimenopause, right?
Right.
And so, if your body hurts and you're sore, you may not be interested in sexual activity. If you're exhausted and
Yeah.
fatigued, then you're not going to be interested. If you've had, dryness or changes, and pelvic floor changes, you also might not be interested. So that's another thing. So the reason I think it's important to go through the causes of low libido and lower sexual desire is because if we know the causes, then we can figure out how to treat it and what to address.
So
So,
what do you see though sometimes as treatments for all of this?
well, so when I look at the first cause, that first category, which is hormones, one of the first treatments is hormones. So, we look at, well, if your progesterone levels are lower or erratic, you can often start with a progesterone pill at nighttime. The bioidentical prometrium is the one we tend to use. And just that alone can sometimes help women get a better sleep, help with irritability.
Huh.
And if those things are affecting the reason for, if they're exhausted, and all of a sudden they're feeling more calm and sleeping better, that can help. Then you can also replace estrogen. So even if you're still cycling and having menstrual cycles, you can still
Mm,
add a low dose of estrogen. And sometimes
hmm,
that alone is enough
mhm,
to help. And then you can also talk to your doctor about testosterone. So topical testosterone. So there's different ways to use it. You can, the it's off label because right now we only have an indication for testosterone therapy for men with low testosterone. We don't for women, but you can use a lower dose of a testosterone that's meant for men on women,
huh,
topically on the skin, or even right on the genitals to really help. And that really has been shown to correlate well with
mhm,
improved libido. So that's addressing the hormones. That's step one. Step two, you can address those neurotransmitters that I talked about. So remember, dopamine tends to go down, and dopamine is associated with increased arousal. So there's a medication on the market that some of my patients have asked me about. It's called ADE. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
oh,
So you'll see ads for it. Oh, this is wonderful for, hypoactive sexual desire disorder in women. Okay, so I tried to prescribe it. Can't get it. It's on back order in Canada at least.
no.
So they market this, oh, here, women, talk to your doctor. You have this available, but you can't get it. So
Wow.
hopefully that will be available soon.
Huh,
So that's one thing. And then you look at serotonin. So we talk about if you're on a SSRI, like if you're on a type of antidepressant that really boosts your serotonin, that can dampen libido. So there's medication adjustments you can make. You can switch the class or you can add um, a type of antidepressant to it that doesn't affect serotonin as much. So an example would be Wellbutrin. So this is something you'd want to talk to your
right.
doctor, but here we're trying to address the neurotransmitter issue. So we've talked about the hormones, we've talked about the neurotransmitters, and then we need to talk about the physical changes affecting enjoyment. So if you're having pelvic floor discomfort, if you're having vaginal dryness, if you're having pain, well, that's when you want to talk about potentially vaginal estrogen. If you're
Mhm,
feeling exhausted and having all sorts of body aches and pains, you want to address that with your doctor. Uh, so those are sort of what I look at when I sit down with someone to talk about it. We look at what could be causing it,
mhm,
and then we look at addressing it in each category. And then the
got it.
last category, it has nothing to do with physical issues or hormonal issues, but it has to do with psychosocial and relationship issues. So if there's a lot of resentment in your relationship, um, if there are some relationship issues, if there's a lack of intimacy, obviously that's not going to be corrected by taking testosterone. That needs to
Right, right.
happen.
Well, I don't know, I've heard some people take it and it makes them wild, so
With some
maybe
people taking
maybe
what?
I've heard people take testosterone, it makes them on the wild side, then maybe nothing would irritate them.
Women or men?
Women,
Really? It makes them wild, hey?
apparently,
Interesting. Like wild in what way?
they want it all the time.
All the time. So we've seen that. So I've heard about that happening with women that get the testosterone pellet.
Yes.
So the pellet is when you insert it under the skin. And that's not as common in Canada as it is in the US. There's only
Mhm.
a few practitioners that do it here. And it's often not recommended as much because you can't really control the amount. So for some women, it might be too much. And like
Hmm.
you say, maybe they'll get wild
Yeah.
or have acne or have some facial hair or
Yeah, or
other,
grow hair.
or grow hair in the wrong place.
Right, right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but it's
Okay.
worthwhile. Like I feel like no one ever talked about this. And the fact that I'm telling you that people bring it up in my practice a lot, it's good that women and men too, but right now we're talking about men for sure bringing this up much more
Hmm.
with their doctors. And there's many more there are a lot of specialized clinics that solely deal with men and testosterone. We don't have the same really for women and libido clinic,
Yeah.
which
No.
actually was probably a good idea. It would probably be pretty busy.
Well, yeah, which I think we've talked a little bit about, but yeah, there's
Mhm.
I mean, it's just there's never been any focus for so many
On it.
years or decades on
Yeah.
menopause, let alone the libido side of
Well,
it.
there's an interesting thing. So I just read about it. It's called the grandmother hypothesis. So the grandmother hypothesis is that women are supposed to get less interested in their libido, so decreased, less interested in sex, so that there's not generational competition between older and younger women, so that the women aren't competing with the younger women and can therefore invest more of their energy into being grandmothers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I believe that. Like all these things that we're kind of
Yeah.
trying to, reconfigure, Melissa, we're trying to reconfigure what is the natural course of life, right?
Well, don't forget also, like years ago, the natural course of life, women didn't live much past menopause.
Right.
And now that we are extending longevity, or lifespan, now that people are living into their 90s, even to hundreds, I mean, it doesn't make sense that our ovaries peter out at 50, So
Yeah.
we want to figure out a way to still keep feeling
Hmm.
youthful. We can still look youthful, with plastic surgery and, aesthetic interventions. We can stay more healthy with, lifestyle interventions and medications. And so, a part
Yeah.
of health is being able to have sexual pleasure. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it makes sense that if you're living longer, you want to live better, right? Which is also, I love the saying, you want to plan like you're going to live forever, but also live like you're going to die tomorrow.
oh, I like that. I love that. Plan like you're gonna live forever, but live like you're gonna die tomorrow. Yeah.
So, and that's also too where, when you think about money
Mhm.
and investing and the importance of investing, it's amazing. Like I've talked about how, my mom just started investing at age 60. She's 90 now. And that money that just compounded and did nothing fancy with, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We're that money is paying for these very expensive retirement homes that, she feels like she's living in luxury.
Yeah.
So it's amazing how and it was a small amount like that she started with, and it just grows and grows and grows. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but I want to also, if you're ready, talk a little bit about the market right now.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
Mhm.
So, you people may have seen the discussion over the weekend that President Trump wanted Greenland, and the market opened up down significantly on Monday. Then, of course, yesterday we had news that they have reached some type of deal, Trump and NATO, as it relates to Greenland. And just to make sure everybody's up to speed, why do they want Greenland? It's strategically important as it relates to the thawing of glaciers and Russia and China's ability to come closer and closer. That's one aspect of it. So, from a security perspective, but also, of course, the rare earth minerals, which every government around the world is trying to secure more of. So, that's kind of why it's been there. Interestingly, he's the fourth president going back well over 100 years to talk about Greenland. Actually, there's been more presidents. And in fact, one president, I think in 1946, offered millions of dollars in gold to be able to buy Greenland. So
Hmm.
that was like 1946. And then you also saw this prior to that. I think it was Truman. So this is not actually new. If people are, because I think the way people reacted in the media is that this is a brand new idea and stark uh, approach. But it's been done in the past. And interestingly, as well, like I was looking up all this, Melissa, because people forget as well about the Louisiana Purchase. You've heard of it, but what was it?
Mhm.
Well, it was when the United States bought this area of land between Mississippi and the Rockies and the Gulf of Mexico up to Canada. So think Midwest America. That's the Louisiana Purchase. It wasn't Louisiana State. Louisiana Purchase became 15 states And the United States bought it from France when Napoleon had just lost a war and couldn't put his resources towards trying to create this French area within North America. So there was a purchase for this land. So
Yeah. It's good.
historically, this
It's been
happens.
done. Yeah.
Okay. Like, just to put it in perspective.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think that, just watching, the news, I don't think people have a problem with him saying, we would love to do a deal and purchase that land and do a deal. I don't think they have a problem with that. I think they have a problem if they think it's just going to be taken
Right.
unfairly,
Yeah.
you know? Um, that
Yeah.
I think is more of the concern. But,
True.
when all this happens, it's like I feel like Trump, whenever he does something and the markets react poorly, he dials it back because he doesn't want he's very sensitive to how the markets react. So he dials it back because he doesn't want it to, yeah,
Well,
maybe.
regardless of his intent on the market front, I think what's interesting about the markets and why I find it so interesting is because it reflects what's going on in the world. So what
Mhm.
more interesting of a way to look at geopolitics, economies, which really just means looking at people, right? This is all just about people and people's
Well,
desires for protection and strategy.
which to your point is why if you look at the Canadian markets, they've been doing so well because people are so confused and looking for a safe place with gold, right?
That's right.
Okay. So it's like, does that tell us something about the world thinking, I don't know what's going on? There's confusion, there's uncertainty. Let's park it in gold. And maybe that's why, obviously that is why the Canadian market's been doing so well.
That's
Yeah.
right. That's
Yeah.
right. So now, of course, when we had this resolution yesterday, we saw the markets rebound dramatically. That's
Yeah.
continued today. And we also actually had, which is interesting, the US economic data came out, a couple of different data points. And it's important to, be mindful of what the actual data is telling us, right? Because then it tells you how aggressive do I want to be at putting new money to work, right?
Mhm.
Or do I wanna sell any positions? So, as an example, the US GDP was revised higher. So it's for the 3rd quarter, 4.3%. That's a very strong economy.
Mm.
And there are projections for the 4th quarter that it could be even 5.4%. So you've seen very good growth in the United States. The jobless claims have continued to decline. Personal income is up 4.3% year over year in November. And you've also seen disposable income, so that's income minus taxes, up 3.8% year over year. Spending is up 5.4% year over year. So, taken all together, that's telling you that the US economy continues to be resilient. And it's
Yeah.
also telling you that spending, is strong. So then you might, in your head, want to say, oh, let me look at some consumer discretionary stocks, potentially. Um, so that's the United States. To your point about Canada, we're obviously in the crosshairs now with having Prime Minister Carney side with China, and cozying up to China and Qatar, both regions very well documented for human rights abuses, and the concern about bringing Chinese EVs into Canada and the spyware. There's a new survey out from PwC, Price Waterhouse, that Canada has slipped to 12th in terms of investable countries. So we're going down. And CEOs are concerned here in Canada more so than in the past, saying that, and 35% are saying that tariffs are going to decrease their profits. So when we look at the Canadian market, to me, despite the fact that the TSX might be going up, what's driving it? And it is the metals and mining area. So it's really
Mm.
important to, understand what the drivers are and what they always are. So that's just a little bit. And, having said that, it's like, okay, well, if I've got Canadian money, where do I want to invest? And then you can also, of course, invest using your Canadian money in US stocks, doing different ETFs, which we're going to talk about. Um, but, uh, but I think, you wanted to talk a little bit about what's a sexy
Mhm.
stock. So a sexy stock. Well, do you want to say what you think it is?
Well, I don't know what I can say what it's not.
Okay.
Sexy stocks tend not to be the dividend paying stocks that aren't growth stocks. Like to me, sexy stocks are growth stocks that are exciting, that are
Yeah.
big potential, that are, yeah, and also that are things that people can touch and feel and are interested in. So, you know,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's how I would describe it.
That's right. So they tend to be exciting. They tend to be attractive, interesting. They have a hype factor. So think
Mhm.
AI, EVs, biotech, where there might be a new biotech breakthrough. So something kind of exciting. Also, sometimes something that's disruptive, but certainly on the AI front, the sexy stock there would be NVIDIA. Disruption, new technology. You could think Tesla. And they also tend to have strong momentum. So, momentum means they have rapid price gains, right? So gold, which I don't think has ever been sexy, is now sexy, right? You just continue to see higher and higher prices of gold. Same with silver. Um, but strong momentum, people are buying into this because they think it's going to be the next best thing. And sometimes they have a good story. So
Yeah.
a good story historically, not right now, I don't think, would be clean energy. And then to your point about what's unsexy, steady eddy, predictable cash flows, paying a dividend, think utilities, think railroads. You can even
Johnson
think,
and Johnson. Yeah, good
yeah,
stuff. I'm not saying they're not
yeah,
good,
very
but
good stuff. And so, when I think about it, and I think about sexy versus non-sexy, going back when I worked on the institutional trading desks at big firms in the States, it was 2003, and everybody was still like the bubble hadn't burst, the tech bubble hadn't burst. And I called a huge portfolio manager, who's that's actually the CIO of a big insurance company, and because they manage money, right? Um, and I talked to him about Nucor, which is a steel company, and we had a great steel analyst. And nobody was calling the steel analyst because they were all calling the tech analyst, saying, "Talk to my big PM,
Mhm,
portfolio manager, about tech." And I kind of really listened to this analyst because they come on your morning call, and
mhm.
he was really recommending Nucor. So I called the CIO about it, and he ended up buying it. Nobody was buying Nucor in 2003, and he made a boatload of money, and it actually helped me get promoted because he
Really?
was yeah, because he was so on my side. I got promoted and paid. And anyway, so in 2003, Nucor was $27. It's 644 today.
Wow, that was a good
Yeah. And when I called other people about Nucor, which wasn't sexy, I literally got yelled at because it wasn't a sexy stock in a market that was, everything was going higher because it was tech. And then, of course, the bubble burst. So personally, I like to have,
combo.
I really do. I
Yeah,
really do.
it's like your wardrobe. You need to have the basics. You can't have all sexy dresses.
You cannot.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right. So I just thought, in some ways, Melissa, one of the areas that we talked about that's sexy right now, metals and mining materials. And, why is that? Well, if you think about, and so the two areas, and you own one of them is uranium, right?
Mhm.
You own
Yeah, I've been
Cameco.
talking about that. We started talking about that again, like, I think a year and a half ago or something, a year ago.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But you've owned that for a while, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I kept looking at all this AI and I kept hearing about we need energy, we need energy, we need energy. And you do. The amount of energy it takes to even run like a chat GPT prompt is crazy. And these data centers, they require massive. And I was just like, they're going to need more energy. And I
Hmm.
bought into that. I understood that. And so I was like, okay, well, yeah. So I was like, how do I
Hmm.
invest in nuclear? I guess uranium. And yeah, for
Yeah.
me at the time, it was Camco.
Right.
Mhm.
Uranium powers nuclear energy.
Right.
And so CCJ is the ticker, and that's the one that people have owned. And of course, the issue that it's at record highs right now. But when you think beyond just uranium, you can think copper as well. Like copper's had a real supply deficit. The supply's only grown about 1.4%. That's in 2025. That's the lowest in a number of years. And it takes a long time to get these mines
Yeah.
found,
Yeah.
production, operating, et cetera. So, you're seeing many analysts increase, their copper projections, their price projections, and then that price is obviously what these companies get paid for their product. So, there's been some real, you know, real focus there. There's one analyst upgraded a mining stock today. It's called SSR Mining in Canada. SSRM is the ticker, and it's up 12% today. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is just to show you, when we talk about analysts and what do they do for a living, they analyze these companies and the price and the forecasts and the macro environment, the company specifics, and they can really move stocks. And that's
Yeah.
why I wanted to point that out. But there's, just to kind of talk about some of the other ones out there. On the copper front, there's Hudbay Mining, Lundin, First Quantum, just to name a few. But one of the other things that we wanted to talk about today, Melissa, was like, let's just get people need to just get started, right? Like you just need to put some money to work, and sometimes people don't know, what to put that in. But I did want to bring up um, there are ETFs that represent, as we know, just the market broadly, different sectors, including the material sector. So I'll talk about a few of those as well.
Sure.
But what about anything that strikes you on all of that?
Well, it was funny because we've been talking about Tesla for also. It's been one of the first stocks we talked about. I think we talked about it on our very first podcast because I
Yeah.
talked about it as one of my misses. Remember when I was buying my first stocks and
Hmm.
I was going to buy Netflix and Tesla, but I put a limit order and I didn't get filled for Tesla
Yeah.
and for Netflix. And then I never went back and back. I never went back and bought it. And so it drove me crazy to watch, and the reason was because I remember my first ride in an Uber, in a Tesla was an
Hmm.
Uber, picked me up in a Tesla and I was wowed by it. And so I just thought it was just the future. And that's why I liked it. And then I got a little bit less. I own a Tesla. We talked about this. And then I got a little bit
Yeah.
less impressed per se. Like I found that like it was kind of like I told you the self-driving, when I did
Hmm.
the beta test last year on the self-driving, I was like, well, this isn't good. Like it's relying on my cameras and I felt like that wasn't ready for the road that, I didn't trust it. But
Yeah.
since then, I went back. I was actually at Yorkdale last week because I had to go to the Apple store and Tesla's right across from the Apple store. And so I had to wait for my appointment time. And so I popped in and I was like, oh, let me see the new Y, right? Like, let me see the new version of the car.
Yep.
And then, so they told me they're no longer making the 7-seaters, they're only making the 5-seater. And they said they've completely updated the FSD. And it's almost like a hardware software. If you think of your computer, if you had an
Hmm.
old laptop or an old iPhone, you sometimes can't, or an old iPad, you can't get the new software on it. It's not compatible. That's why
Hmm.
you have to upgrade your hardware. Well,
Yeah.
you can't get the new FSD software on the old ones,
Wow.
the old cars. So you have to
Really?
upgrade them. But I took a drive. So the guy's like, you want to do a test drive? And I was like, yes, I do. It was amazing. It was a different experience than the one that we used. And I do believe that it's the first time I drove in a self-driving car that I do believe it is the future. And I do believe it will happen. And I
Hmm.
think the AI is it's just AI. It's like when you were always saying, I remember you always would say Tesla's an AI play.
Yeah.
And I get that. Yes, it's the car, but it's just, with everything they're doing with the Optimus robot. And anyhow, it was a
Hmm.
I think it's a sexy stock.
See, yeah. So I think it's a sexy stock, and interestingly, the CEO said that they're now expecting to really operate those full self-driving vehicles unsupervised to the general public in Austin. And
Yeah.
so I think to your point, that's really coming about. They also expect that to happen that the EU and China will approve FSD next month, fully self-driving cars. And interestingly, so sometimes when you see a stock that has positive news, I always think, well, who's that hurting? So you actually saw with that news coming out today, Uber down 2%.
Yeah.
So just always think, okay, if this is up, what's down? Or if this is down, what is up on the other side is how I
Well,
kind of look at it.
right, because I'm still confused about the whole Tesla, Uber, you know,
I
we
know.
don't need Ubers as much, but I think that they're still both. I still think Uber has. I don't know. I like you could. Someone was even telling me like if you own a Tesla,
Yeah.
right? So let's say you want to make money while you're at work. My Tesla could be the Uber. I could be
Could be
making
the
money
Uber flight
because the
fleet.
Uber, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I make, sort of like I was hearing Elon Musk saying how, or I was listening to something where he was saying we don't need Uber, we have our own cars, but they have a massive network, Uber. So I still wouldn't be surprised if that they collaborate in some
Yeah. It still
way.
feels very early days in terms of how and what becomes of Uber. Like that. And you and I've talked a lot about this stock. We've had a guest on who loves Uber, and I haven't bought it yet because I still don't
I did.
understand. You did?
I did
Okay.
because my credit card bill is all Uber.
Right.
So when I look at my credit card bill, I just think about, and also I told you that psychologically it makes me less mad about spending on certain things if I own the stock. It's a
Yes.
psychological play for me.
Yes, I agree. I agree. Well, I just want to go back for 1 second because I found it. So, one of the ETFs that you can buy that represents the TSX sector, the materials sector, metals and mining, and forestry and chemicals, is the XMA.
XMA.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So that's just one to keep in mind. And you know, yeah. So that's one. I would also say
So
too. Go ahead.
I was going to say something else about this idea of sexy stock. So if you're looking at where you want to own a sexy stock, whether you want to
Hmm.
own it in your RSP or your TFSA, I think this is where you'd want to look at owning it in your TFSA because you're not taxed on the.
Right.
Whereas you don't want to own a US stock that's a good dividend paying stock in your TFSA because then you're going to be paying the withholding tax. So, so I think TFSA, sexy,
A little bit. Yeah. I think
a
you're
little
right.
set,
I think you're
RSP,
right.
just different ways to sort of
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah, I think you're right. Another sexy stock too. Well, what's sexy right now as well is the small cap stocks in the United States.
Hmm.
So the Russell 2000 represents 2,000 small stocks in the United States. Yes, hard to believe that they have 2,000 small cap stocks. The market in the United States, you just have to appreciate, is so much bigger than in Canada. So 2,000. And one of the ETFs that everybody always looks at is it's called the IWM, and it's outpacing the S&P 500 14 sessions in a row by about 8%. It's the most number of sessions it's outpaced the S&P 500 in 1990. So you have to say, well, why is that happening? What is this telling me? What does this mean? It means that there's optimism around the US economy, around cyclicals. Everything kind of starts here. The big companies tend to get the revenue, and if the economy is doing well, there's a real trickle down effect to smaller companies, and in this case smaller cap companies. So it could be wrong. I mean, the IWM could be running up, and these companies aren't going to do as well as it's perceived, but there's been that shift. So you're seeing, and this has actually started to occur at the end of 2025, that you started to see more of an interest in the IWM. So I would just say that the ideal IWM, the small cap stocks, are a little bit sexy right now. And what's interesting too is, as a Canadian, if have Canadian money, and you don't want to convert it because you don't want to take the loss, you can invest in, I think there's just one small cap ETF that you can invest in here. I'll find it. I had it out. Um, but yeah, I think that's something that people can still always get exposure to, right?
Hmm.
Being in Canada.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's sexy. Gold is obviously sexy, as I said. There was one stock too I just wanted to bring up.
Crypto still sexy?
Which one?
Is crypto still sexy?
Good question.
I don't know.
I'd still put in that category, but yes, as it pulled back, absolutely. But I think around the world right now, there's so many governments that are looking at this and creating stable coins and creating new regulation as to how to regulate crypto. So I hear you, and I thought about that, and I don't think it's going away.
Yeah. I
I
don't think it's
think
going away either. I think it's just volatile. I think it will just be up and
yeah.
down. It was weird. Today, I had to take my daughter to a doctor's appointment, and
Mhm.
I thought the building it used to be in is no longer the building it's in. So I drove there first, and it looks like a lot of uh, I think that they're probably going to take down the building and turn it into, I don't know, condos or something. But when I went in, There was a
Yeah.
Bitcoin machine, bank
Oh,
machine.
yeah.
I've never seen one of those like that. Like in its random sort of
Interesting.
dilapidated building. It was weird.
Wow. I've definitely seen them. I don't think I've seen them in Canada.
Well, I
Where
think
was this
it was
about?
just like Midtown Toronto.
Huh.
It was weird to see it there. I mean, there used to be one. I don't know if it's still there in Hazelton Lanes, like in
Oh,
Yorkville Village.
huh.
You know, but
Interesting. Oh,
mhm,
well, you know what's interesting? Yeah. Yeah, I guess we'll see about crypto, but I do think it's still here to stay. The one other stock I wanted to mention though, Melissa, because I think you do still own it, is Netflix.
I do. Yeah. Oh,
And so
continuing that kind of,
this is a stock that I would say has hair on it.
yeah.
That's another expression, and it has hair on it. Well, do you want to talk about why? I'm sure you've been following this.
No, you can talk
No?
about
Okay.
that. Not that yet.
Okay. So what there's obviously not obviously, but in the news, of course, Netflix has been wanting to buy Warner Brothers. Paramount wants Warner Brothers. The numbers are very large. It feels like there's a big fight that's going on for this. Uh, and, it's a real question mark because if, in fact, Netflix is able to buy Warner Brothers, then are they the behemoth within the streaming? That's what antitrust regulation would argue, that they become too big and and it's unfair competition. And that's what
But
Paramount would
that's
say
like
as
the
well.
Mag 7. You could say that about every one of those companies. Like, how are they going to say that?
Well, because within streaming, long form streaming, that would be true in terms of market share. However, something like Netflix would say, well, no, no, there's TikTok, there's Instagram, there's all this short form,
YouTube.
yeah,
Yeah.
YouTube. So the market is much bigger. All to say, which way is this deal going to go? If they get it, they add a lot of debt onto them, onto the balance sheet. If they don't get it, there's some big break fees that happen. So that's a stock that has been a bit under pressure, and there's hair on it. We don't know which way it's going to
Yeah.
go. I think regardless of which way, Netflix would be fine because it is the anchor tenant, and you've talked about this. That is still the stock, the streamer that everybody is still going to use. I think.
I think so too. I think it's, if I had to get rid of all of them except for one, I would keep Netflix. I think the content is really good. And I wanted to plug today a new show. And Catherine, you need to watch this with your
I
figure skating
will.
background. A new show launched just today called Finding Her Edge. And this is a film shot in Canada. And my daughter, Rebecca,
What?
is in the first episode.
No.
Yeah, I mean, it's a smaller part, but in episode
That's
1, season 1, and
what?
it's a figure skating drama, teen drama, romantic. I think watch it.
And you didn't tell me this?
Mm-mm. I didn't know
Uh,
I don't even know the way that works. I remember her shooting this part, and that was one of the times I couldn't bring her. So Adam had to take her outside of Toronto. They were shooting at this arena. Then you never know what's happening. I didn't realize it was going to be a Netflix show. I don't know if it knew at the time. Maybe it did. And then, Rebecca got in the car today and she's like, Mom, look. And she pulls it up on her phone. And yeah.
That's
So,
amazing. I can't
yeah,
believe that they're making a figure skating show though.
finding her edge. Well, it's one of they've done other sort of sports. They've done football dramas and they've done hockey dramas. Well, speaking of hockey dramas, have you
Okay.
watched Heated Rivalry?
Heated rivalry?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Okay. So your homework
Lot
for
to
this
do.
week, because I gotta go,
Hey,
watch
okay.
Heated Rivalry. I will watch it as well. And next week we will talk about it.
Okay, we'll do that. Wait, and just so you know, Netflix has been down 10% in 1 month and 25% in 3 months. So it's worth also, if you think it's as great as we think it is, and it's just all this deal noise and hair on the story, because I don't own it, doing my
Yeah.
homework today for this, I was like, maybe I should buy it now. Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
Good.
Okay.
Okay.
And then next time I want to go through these ETFs. I wrote them all down so that people can actually get started.
Great. Awesome. And then
Okay.
we can also link them. Let's link the ETFs you mentioned today to our social media
Okay.
and to YouTube.
Okay. Sounds great.
Perfect.
Okay.
Bye.